I've got so much to say. I've got to slow myself down. Let me start with some news. We have an official statement from Ben Carson. He has decided not to attend the Fox News GOP presidential debate tomorrow night in Detroit, and he will talk more about his campaign. He said he sees no path forward in his presidential campaign, and we were down to 4. We also have Mitt Romney is supposed to make a big statement tomorrow about the 2016 race, which is where I want to start today. There's no denying there's something very, very deep and, frankly, I think very sinister now going on, and we can no longer deny it. And it's important that we shed some light on it, and it's something that causes me great anger and frustration. And for those of you out there, regardless of who you are supporting, you should not like what's happening here. They're stating the obvious. It was a great night last night by any objective measure for both Donald Trump and for Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz had to win his home state of Texas. He not only won it, he won all 36 congressional districts, and he got a bulk of the delegates for him. He also won the neighboring state of Oklahoma. I said yesterday Oklahoma was in play a little bit, so pretty much every prediction I made yesterday was dead on. He won Alaska yesterday. He has now won 4 states. Donald Trump had 7 wins yesterday on top of his previous 3. He's now won 10 states. And then Marco Rubio won Minnesota. And, another way to look at this, I've always said this is the year of the insurgent. And this is, again, the insurgency. And this was not discussed last night, or very little. And it became very frustrating to me. And we got back to the same old ridiculous pundit calculations that if this one gets out and this one gets out, then you can add this number with this number, and then you beat Donald Trump or you beat Ted Cruz. It doesn't work that way. We learned that with Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush had 7% in South Carolina, got out of the race that night. And what we learned is, all right, 2% of the vote went to Marco, 2% went to Ted Cruz, 1% went to Trump, 1% went to Kasich, and 1% went to Carson. So these pundits and these so-called political professional experts keep doing math that is non-existent in the real world. That's only part of my frustration. The great news that we now have out of this primary process with 15 states now in, we have huge enthusiasm on the conservative side, on the Republican side. This is an insurgency year. It is a level that was only matched on the Democratic side back in 2008. As a matter of fact, if you look at the numbers, it has been a 100% shift where enthusiasm is totally on the Republican side and not on the Democratic side. So that's the one good thing. Now I'm going to get to the bad thing. There's something that has happened, and I don't fully, completely understand it all, but I have a theory. It seems that there are a number of plans that are in place to stop at any cost the candidacies or potential candidacies of either Trump or Cruz. And unfortunately, the vehicle through which what has now become dropping the kitchen sink, scorched earth, thermonuclear, if you want to use that term, MMA bare knuckles brawl, if you will, the vehicle through which this fight is being fought seems to be Senator Marco Rubio. And I say this with great disappointment because I've never seen a candidate shift and change as much as I have now witnessed in the last week and a half, Senator Rubio. And what I suspect is happening here, you hear about all these rich people, all of these plans. I don't think it's a coincidence that Mitt Romney is coming out. That's another disappointment. I think Mitt Romney would have been a great president. I personally like Mitt Romney. I think he is a good man. I think, I was angry at the way they debated him in the last 2 debates, especially the third debate. I threw every expletive I can think at his team. I remember I was in a trailer at the debate, furious and livid. He could have won that race. And for some reason, he pulled back because idiots around him told him something that wasn't true, that he had it in the bag after he had a great first debate performance. But I digress. I put together a montage here, and I want to throw this theory by you. And what I suspect is happening here is I think there is such anger, such animosity, such contempt, such hatred at the two frontrunners on the Republican side. And I don't know who they hate more or less. Like, I know Lindsey Graham said, we might not be stuck supporting Ted Cruz. Lindsey Graham hates Ted Cruz. John McCain hates Ted Cruz. They hate him because he showed them up. Donald Trump is having incredible, it is not just an election in his case, it is a movement. The way he characterized it last night was dead on accurate. Last night, we also saw something that we had not seen before, and that is a presidential-looking Donald Trump. The tone, the pitch, the cadence was extraordinary coming from him, which shows enormous growth on his part as a candidate and a potential nominee for the Republican Party. So what I suspect is happening, you hear these groups, Meg Whitman and Christy Todd Whitman and Mitt Romney's going to come out. This is not by accident. I argue this is by design. And the establishment is so freaked out at you. They're really angry at you. They really are mad they can't control you, the American people. They're mad that you're not voting the way they want you to vote. They're angry that this isn't going their way. They're angry that 14 of the 15 contests have gone towards insurgents. So I suspect this change in Marco Rubio is coming, and this is my imagination working here, the conspiratorial side of me, if you will, but just I beg your indulgence. What I suspect has happened is that Marco Rubio has sat in a room with a lot of establishment types. I guarantee you he has been promised millions and millions and millions of dollars for his campaign. I suspect deeply that this dramatic change, this is not a subtle change, that, listening to him go on and on about the con artist, the fraud, the scam artist. He refuses to repudiate the KKK, hire illegal immigrants, misspelled words. I suspect that this has all been coached. I suspect that this is a strategy that has been put together by all of these people that are angry really at you because they don't like the way you, the American people, are voting. God forbid they ever look in a mirror and realize that they have created and built the insurgency. I think Paul Ryan coming out as he did on, the day before the election, Super Tuesday, and chastising Donald Trump, who had disavowed David Duke and the former Klansman guy, is by design. And you're saying, Hannity, you've lost your mind. Hannity, you're out of your mind. I am going to play for you Marco Rubio, and this is only snippets. And this is Marco Rubio uncharacteristically dropping the kitchen sink, going scorched earth, thermonuclear, MMA, bare knuckles, and I would argue he is being influenced to do it by groups of people because it's so out of character for him. This has almost become a kamikaze mission for him. That not only if I can't have the nomination, well, me and this group of people, we're going to take everybody out with us. I saw Bill Kristol saying again that he'd rather see Hillary win the White House than Trump. Really? Really? You got to be kidding me. Ben Sass, what a huge disappointment. He said that. Really? It's the same pouting, pick up your toys and go home. But conservatives, we're forced to suck it up and support John McCain and Bob Dole. Now, it's either probably going to be Trump or Cruz. They're the only two that are winning big states. And according to the polls, Marco can't win his home state. We'll see. In 2 weeks from today, we'll know whether Marco's in or out. But I don't like scorched earth, and I think this is by design. And I think Marco is being used and abused, frankly, by some group of mysterious people that I'll never know. Tell me if this sounds like the Marco Rubio you once knew.
The fight is to save the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, from someone who is not just a con artist, but who refuses to criticize the KKK. I mean, we cannot nominate someone that takes those positions, someone who shares Hillary's positions on Planned Parenthood, who says he's going to be neutral on Iran, who basically supports government-sponsored health care, which is undistinguishable from Obamacare. But this is a fight for the heart and soul of the Republican Party, and I will not give up this fight. I will go through all 50 states before we stop fighting. We feel really good about the days to come, and you know what? In these races, usually what happens is you have a front runner, and at some point everybody comes around and says we have to rally behind the front runner for the good of the party. They're saying the opposite. They're saying we have to rally to stop Donald Trump, who's a world-class con artist, and a guy who wouldn't even criticize the Ku Klux Klan, from being our nominee, because he'll do tremendous damage to the conservative movement and to the Republican Party. And Donald Trump will never be the nominee of the Republican Party. We are not going to turn over the party of Lincoln and Reagan to a man who refuses to condemn David Duke, refuses to condemn the KKK, and agrees with Hillary Clinton on Planned Parenthood, on staying neutral on Israel, on health care, and on all sorts of other issues. And the guy's a con artist on immigration. He's hiring illegal immigrants to build Trump Towers and hires foreign workers to work in his hotels here in Florida. He makes his clothes overseas in China, and he's talking about bringing jobs back. He can start tonight by announcing that every Donald J. Trump product will be made in the United States from now on. So he's a fraud. He's a scam artist.
You all have friends. You all have friends that are thinking about voting for Donald Trump. Friends, do not let friends vote for con artists. He called me Mr. Meltdown. Let me tell you something. Last night in the debate during one of the breaks, two of the breaks, he went backstage. He was having a meltdown. First, he had this little makeup thing applying, like, makeup around his mustache, because he had one of those sweat mustaches. Then he asked for a full-length mirror. I don't know why, because the podium goes up to here, but he wanted a full-length mirror. Maybe to make sure his pants weren't wet. I don't know. Then, last one. Wow, every poll said I won the debate last night. No, this was him about himself, okay? Great honor. I think he meant to say great honor. I don't know how he got that wrong, because the E and the O are nowhere near each other on the keyboard. Great honor. All right. So, here's that's what I'm thinking. So, how does this guy, not one tweet, 3 tweets, misspell words so badly? And I only reached 2 conclusions. Number 1, that's how they spell those words at the Wharton School of Business, where he went. Or number 2, just like Trump Tower, he must have hired a foreign worker to do his own tweets.
This goes beyond what I tell you happens every election cycle. This, to me, is a nuclear war. This is a war that is now being declared by the establishment against you, the people. I don't care who you're supporting in this race, but you have got to take note of this. You have got to understand what's happening here. Now, there are a lot of ways they think they can get there. They think, all right, well, you need 1,237 delegates to win the nomination outright. Well, let's keep everybody in the race as long as we can. And the problem with that theory is we now get away from the proportional distribution of delegates to winner take all. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to work. You know, John Kasich would have to win Ohio. Marco Rubio would have to win Florida. You know, Ted Cruz would have to stop picking off the states he's picking off for that to work. You know, and then it's, oh, well, we really need to clear the field for Marco. I'm like, clear the field for Marco? He's won one state. One state, and he's down in the polls in his home state. Ted Cruz won his home state last night. Now, you know, so all of this is designed because there's fierce anger. Why is there anger? Wall Street's angry. Why? Because they don't think Trump can be controlled. They don't think Cruz can be controlled. You know, think tanks are worried, too. And then you've got the K Street lobbyists. They're pissed off, too, because that's money in their pocket. They don't get the influence they once had. In other words, they don't get to continue to ruin the lives of the American people with a fundamentally corrupt governmental system. Now, compare that to the tone, cadence of Trump last night.
We have a very, very dynamic party, and I think we're going to be able to unify the party. I hope to be able to get along with everybody. I don't know Paul Ryan well, but I hope to be able to get along with him. I do know Mitch McConnell a little bit, but I hope to be able to get along with him. But remember this, I have millions and millions and millions of people. This isn't like it's a close match. I mean, it's only too bad that winner didn't take all. Because if winner took all, this thing is over. We're just having a celebration. You know, we're having a celebration.
Now compare that. He's trying to bring people together here. and just make the comparison. But that's not going to stop the establishment people. You know, in any other year when you had record turnout like this, any other year you're bringing new people to the table like this, there would be huge bowing at the feet, except if you're not an establishment person. Then all bets are off.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
He never stops working for the good of the country. Sean Hannity with behind-the-scenes information on today's breaking news. Hannity is on right now.
Appetite for Destruction, one of the greatest rock one CD wonders of all time. Jeez. What happened to Axl? He went off the deep end. Anyway, 25 now till the top of the hour. All right, before I get back to the Republican side, let me just give you a couple of updates. We will have time to examine all of this in full, I promise you, in the days and weeks ahead. But there is some news worth reporting on the Hillary front. Yeah, I think she's going to be the nominee, but whether she actually gets there is going to be an amazing thing to witness. And with all the talk and all the establishment crap that is being thrown at we, the people, you, the American people, this is worth taking a moment over. James Comey, the FBI director, this was in the Hill, effectively took ownership of the FBI investigation into Hillary's national security crimes, saying that he's personally involved in overseeing the case, which means that if this whole thing suddenly evaporates, Comey knows his reputation and integrity goes right out the window. And everybody that knows him, I don't know him. Everybody that knows him, that I have talked to, speaks so highly of this guy. And then I think of when poor John Ashcroft was in the hospital and Gonzalez was making his way to get him to sign this piece of paper, and Comey raced over there and was put his job on the line. It sounds like a guy of deep integrity. So we got to see what happens. Anyway, that's what he told Congress yesterday, and he said that he was being questioned. He was being questioned by the House Judiciary Committee in a hearing that was intended to address the battle over Apple's encryption practices. Congressman Steve Chabot switched gears during the questioning to press Comey on the progress of the email investigation. He said, this is a matter of considerable import. Is there anything you can tell us as to when the matter might be wrapped up one way or the other? And Comey said, what I can assure you is that I am very close personally to that investigation to ensure that we have the resources we need, including people and technology, and it's done the way the FBI tries to do all of its work, independently, competently, and promptly. That's our goal. And I'm confident that it's being done that way, but I can't give you any more details beyond that. If I'm Hillary Clinton, I'd have a defense attorney after hearing that statement. I'd have a whole series. I'd have a whole team of defense attorneys after hearing that. Now, Joe DeGeneva, he's married to Victoria Tunsing, both friends of this program, former U.S. attorney. He's confident that the Department of Justice prosecutors have already convened a grand jury in the Hillary Clinton email case based on comments from the Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Lynch interviewed on Fox News Special Report with Bret Baier. DeGeneva said yesterday when Bret Baier asked Attorney General Lynch whether there was a grand jury in the Hillary Clinton email case, she did not deny a grand jury had been convened. If no grand jury had been convened, Attorney General Lynch could easily have denied a grand jury had been convened without violating grand jury secrecy. And based on Lynch's refusal to deny a grand jury had been called in Hillary's case, I'm convinced a grand jury has already been called and is at work at the State Department on the State Department email case. Wow. DeGeneva further noted that Lynch, in the interview with Baier, confirmed the FBI is working with career independent lawyers at the Justice Department, provided what DeGeneva took to be additional confirmation that a grand jury has been convened. Quote, based on this and other information I have been given, I not only believe a grand jury has been convened in the Hillary Clinton email case, I also believe that the grand jury is actively at work with the FBI interviewing people in the case, and the grand jury is literally subpoenaing witnesses to testify. That's pretty amazing. Now, let me get back to this case at hand. And that is, I view it, the only way I can describe this is as a kamikaze mission to take out the insurgency candidates. And Marco Rubio is the pilot. And that there are other people now funding him, getting in his head, filling his head with talking points that are memorized. And I just played for you all of the attacks. You know, it goes on and on. You know, about, it's, you know, con artist, fraud, scam artist, refuses the KKK to denounce the KKK, which is just a lie. Let me play this ad that a Rubio PAC has now put out, because I think this is unbelievable in terms of everything we know about Trump denouncing David Duke and the KKK. This is the tactics the Democrats would use. This is why I say Marco Rubio shocked me. He's now become a totally different person. Marco Rubio is not the Marco Rubio of 2010. And I think what's happened is he's being used and he's being influenced by the establishment to take out the insurgencies. And if you look at the comments, Christy Todd Whitman, Ben Sass, I mean, it's coming from different political directions, some on the more conservative side supporting Cruz, et cetera, but mostly it's the establishment. And I believe that there's probably been many meetings, there's been a lot of coaching, a lot of money promised in the hopes that they can get to a brokered convention. Remember, that's only one of the many ways that they'll try to screw any of the insurgents, especially Trump now, because he's in the lead. You know, let's keep everybody in. Let's prevent him from getting 1,237 delegates going into Cleveland. We'll have a brokered convention, and we'll put either Mitt Romney or Marco Rubio in place. What is Mitt Romney doing here? You know, for all these people that have been so quiet about the horrors of the 8 years of Obama and the horrible use of the race card of Hillary Clinton, I'm like the only one playing the Jim Crow cut. The only one. And yet they're gonna take this incident where Trump doesn't hear in an interview, even though he previously denounced on social media and in a speech, and even back in August, for crying out loud. And it turns into an ad by the establishment against Trump. This is beyond despicable. It is an outright effort to silence your voices here, because you're deciding this, not them. And they're just pissed off that you're not going along with them and their plans.
I asked Donald Trump 3 times if he would disavow the support of David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, I have to look at the group.
Trump refuses to denounce the KKK. Think about that. For president?
Ronald Reagan made us believe that it was morning in America again. Well, now the children of the Reagan Revolution are ready to assume the mantle of leadership.
Conservative Solutions PAC paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if this is by design or this is just the way it's unfolding organically. I suspect it's organic. But what Trump almost brilliantly has done here has, by winning, he has shown the establishment is even worse than we thought, more entrenched than we thought, more power hungry than we thought, more against the people than we've ever thought. In other words, you know, by him winning, you know, Wall Street, the think tanks, K Street, you know, they obviously want to keep all their money flow and keep the system just as it is and not get the American people back to work and become energy independent. They certainly don't want to build the wall, or else the wall would have been built in all these years. So I suspect this is by design. And when I see the people like Bill Kristol admitting he's prepared to hand Hillary Clinton the Oval Office, he was on Joe Scarborough's program, and Scarborough says the fact of the matter is that, you know, there's no historical precedent with someone doing as well as candidate Trump did yesterday, winning New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, et cetera, losing the nomination. That's never happened before. Kristol says, right, so we have to stop the momentum. I totally agree. And then, you know, I'm just sitting here thinking, you know, it goes on and on. It's like they want to have Hillary Clinton. What is wrong with these people? Because Hillary Clinton is a third Obama term. Interesting, on the other side of it, Tavis Smiley is warning Hillary Clinton that she can't take the black vote for granted this year. He writes that warning black voters could get on the Trump train. I've talked privately to some of Trump's black friends since I read the piece, and to a person, their critique of him is highly nuanced. Men and women from black America's most privileged classes either genuinely like the guy or they're afraid of being caught as a social media meat grinder, but he's suggesting that could happen. Now, if anybody is probably going to do better as a result of these attacks, it's going to be Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz had a phenomenal night last night. And yet everyone said, oh, Ted Cruz needs to get out of the race. He didn't win the SEC primary. Ted Cruz won 4 states so far. If you add Trump and Cruz numbers together, you've got 14 out of 15 contests going to insurgency candidates. That's a big deal. Washington Post pointed out today that Cruz may have built an advantage for the upcoming primaries because some of these primaries coming up are closed primaries, meaning not only are they winner-take-all states like Florida and Ohio, but, you know, the media is looking forward to that. Saturday, there are 4 Republican primary caucuses, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Maine. They're closed, meaning you can't have crossover from Democrats and independents. And they look at Oklahoma, which was a closed primary, and they're saying, well, he might be able to win there. Now, on the other hand, on the Democratic side, this is fascinating. This was in the Hill today. Union leaders are expected supposedly to line up behind Hillary, but Democrats are starting to worry that rank-and-file union workers are going to pull the lever for Trump. Isn't that fascinating? And then you got polls showing that, Trump takes 20% of Democrats. I am just looking at this as discerningly and as objectively as I possibly can. And I've never seen in my lifetime this MMA, bare knuckles, kamikaze mission, kitchen sink, scorched earth, thermonuclear war like to this level. You know, I can think back and I can cite for you what they said about Reagan, the amiable dunce. They hated Reagan because he was considered, Tea Party before Tea Party ever happened. But the fact that they can't get their way, and now everybody kind of worships Reagan, but there were a lot of people that were latecomers to the Reagan Revolution anyway. So I've got everybody out there. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Now, there was one theory that was floated by a friend of mine today. Well, do you think that Cruz and Rubio will join forces? Well, they're certainly going to join forces tomorrow. I mean, we should actually have a drinking game tomorrow. How many times the word con artist, fraud, scam artist, refuse to criticize the KKK, hire illegal immigrants, misspelled words, and Trump University comes up? Because I guarantee you, if you're drinking, you'll be drunk in 20 minutes. You take a shot anytime any one of those words are uttered, and you're going to be plastered in no time at all.
The fight is to save the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, from someone who is not just a con artist. They're saying we have to rally to stop Donald Trump, who's a world-class con artist.
All right, enough of that. But, look at the victory. Trump won victories in states in the Deep South, in New England, Alabama to Massachusetts, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia. I mean, it shows his appeal transcends regional and ideological divisions. He won conservative areas, heavily evangelical states. The only person that is giving him a hard time is Ted Cruz. And by the way, I would tell you right now that everything they're doing to Trump, because Trump won more contests than Cruz, they'd be doing to Cruz. Right now, if Trump never got into this race, these are states Ted Cruz would win. Trump entered the contest, winning 3 out of 4. He carried 7 out of 11 last night. He's got 316 delegates. Cruz has 226. He had a great night last night as far as delegates counts, and especially in Texas and Oklahoma. Rubio has 106. So the window for stopping Trump is closing, as the Washington Post Dan Balls wrote. If anyone has the case that there should be a one-on-one contest, the answer is Ted Cruz. But that would be 2 insurgency candidates, and the establishment can't have that. It's, Trump overwhelmingly won strong among his core supporters, blue-collar workers out there. He showed some erosion among white-collar, college-educated in states like Virginia. But, the great news for Trump is his main rivals here, especially Rubio, look like, they're just flailing. This is a Hail Mary pass, swinging for the fences, a 15th-round knockout strategy, and it seems suicidal to me. The Marco Rubio you're hearing from is not the Marco Rubio in real life. He has been co-opted. It's the only explanation I can come up with. And, Rubio wanted to emerge from Super Tuesday better than he did. And now he's in a position where he must win the state of Florida. There's no possible path to the nomination except through the establishment by preventing Trump from getting to the magic number of 1,237 or Ted Cruz running up a string of states, which could happen considering he's the closest competitor. So for those establishment people that are throwing the kitchen sink right now, they're not just throwing it at Trump and Cruz. Don't be disillusioned. Don't be illusioned here. Don't fall for the illusion. They're throwing the kitchen sink at you. They're mad at you. They're mad at how you voted. They don't look at themselves as the problem. And if you think they were bad by not stopping Obamacare and using the power of the purse and not stopping executive amnesty, and now harping on this ridiculous, phony KKK David Duke issue, there's no tactic that the Democrats use that they're not going to steal and match. It is disgraceful. It's beyond comprehension because they love their power and they're losing. And you're making them lose, and they can't take it. 14 out of 15 contests, insurgents have won. All right, we'll get to a lot. We have Newt Gingrich today. We have a representative from Trump, Cruz, and Rubio coming up. We got Jamie Dupree with the latest fallout. We'll go over some of the numbers from last night. We also have coming up in the program a lot of your calls. I promise we'll leave time for a lot of calls today, so stay right there.
This is the Sean Hannity Show podcast. Live from the Hill, our very own Jamie Dupree with the latest news from D.C.
All right, he's the most connected man in Washington, D.C., out and about for the Sean Hannity Show. It's our post-Super Tuesday edition. And later at the bottom of the hour, we have Newt Gingrich checking in and a representative from all the three top Republican campaigns. Jamie Dupree, what a Super Tuesday night it was.
Certainly was, Sean. I mean, look, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in winning 7 races yesterday. They dominated the night. Neither of them locked down their party's nomination, but certainly it was a big step forward. You know, if I have to look at the results for the Democrats first, real quick, I mean, Hillary Clinton's numbers in the South were just astonishing. I mean, she won Alabama 78-19 and had a 43% edge in Georgia. I mean, she won the South in a just destructive way against Bernie Sanders. Sanders, though, his win in Oklahoma, I thought was sort of one of the more interesting wins of the night. If you had the Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz daily double in Oklahoma, then you certainly won the office pool, because I didn't see that one coming. But I think right now she seems to be in a pretty good situation in that Democratic race. Now, on the Republican side, my quick thumbnail would be I thought Trump would win more than 7 states. It's not that he had a bad night. He had a good, solid night. But he did have a couple of close wins that could have gone the other way. For Ted Cruz, I mean, Texas, not only did he win, but then he rang the bell big time. I described for you the rules for Texas and the delegates yesterday. Cruz won every single congressional district in his state, all 36 of them, which gave him an additional 72 delegates and really allowed him to do pretty well vis-a-vis Donald Trump. In the end, Trump got about 42% of the delegates last night. I think that's about where we would have expected him, Sean, because of the difficulty of winning delegates and running away with things.
Well, because of proportional distribution.
Exactly. Cruz got about 37%. And then Rubio, he finally did break through and get one win, but he struggled in the delegates. He got about 19%. His big failure were 3 different states, Alabama, Vermont, and Texas, where he came up short of the 20% threshold. It cost him about 20 delegates, I think, were the numbers that I sort of crunched and figured out. So, I mean, it wasn't the end of the world, but still would have been 20 delegates, 10 each, that Cruz and Trump didn't have. So I guess the end all from the top 3 and from the other 2 is that nobody's getting out of the race post Super Tuesday. We're gonna slog through the next 8 states, 4 this Saturday and then 4 next Tuesday before getting to March 15th. And then I think by then it'll be pretty obvious. If John Kasich can win in Ohio, he'll stay in. If he doesn't, he'll be done. If Marco Rubio wins in Florida, he'll stay in. If he doesn't, he'll be done. For some people, it may be too long to wait for 2 weeks to get that done, but I think that's where we're headed right now.
Well, we've got a couple of races in 3 days. We've got Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Nebraska.
And not Nebraska. Nebraska is only for the Democrats, actually, on Saturday.
And then we've got Maine 4 days, but again, we're talking Republican and Democrats. That's the Democrats. Then you've got Hawaii, Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi in 6 days. And then we get to Florida, Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, North Carolina.
Yeah, and that'll be a big, big day. I mean, 2 weeks from today when we speak, I think we should have a pretty good idea, either A, that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are on their way to the nomination, or that we're going to have a slog forward for the Republicans, most likely. And, I would say that probably, I know a lot of the people who are talking about sort of how do they stop Donald Trump, and they keep saying, well, they need to clear the field to do it. I'm getting of the opinion now that probably if they wanted to frustrate Trump and really not let him get to the majority, that maybe the best way is simply by having these the four other candidates.
Well, that's part of the strategy. They want them all to stay in the hopes that he doesn't get to the magic number.
I don't know that they want him. I don't think the Rubio people want Kasich in, and they don't want Cruz in, and Cruz doesn't want Rubio in or Kasich.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for them to, I'm watching last night, and this is one of the more frustrating things as I flip around the dial is everybody goes through this ridiculous fantasy math of theirs. Well, if this one got out and this one goes out and we add this person's numbers to that person's numbers, when Jeb Bush got out, we learned a lot, except nobody paid attention except you and me. And that is that, well, okay, sure, of the 7% Jeb Bush got in South Carolina, 2% would go to Rubio, 2% to Cruz, 1% to Kasich, 1% to Carson, 1% to Trump. So it was...
Yeah, it's not a clean, like you take my 7% and it just goes to somebody else.
But that's how they add it up all the time. And it's like, it's so idiotic and simplistic and naive that it's frustrating to watch it.
Yeah, I think so. Where we stand is obviously Trump is still the leader. And as I said, he had about a 5% edge in terms of delegates on Cruz last night. I mean, Cruz, for him to not only win Texas, but do all the congressional districts. Oklahoma he won, and then late night Alaska, if you missed it, if you were asleep. I mean, that was really big for him. And for Rubio to get even just the one win, he successfully neutered the sound bites from both Trump and Cruz that had been given hours earlier that, geez, if you wake up tomorrow morning and you don't have one win, you should get out of the race. I'm sure the Rubio people would have loved to have John Kasich not in the race. They might have been able to win in Virginia or in Vermont, but you know what? That's not where we were. And Kasich is in the race in a sense because of Rubio's own gaffe in that debate in New Hampshire. So as we go to tomorrow's debate, I think the fact is we'll probably see a repeat in many ways of what happened a week ago with Cruz and Rubio trying to turn more fire on Trump. And I would really believe that the two big showdowns, because they are the true winner-take-all states on the 15th, Ohio and Florida, I would think you'd see a lot of ad money poured into those two states and a lot of it in negative ads against Donald Trump.
I would think that Kasich, even though he's down 5 points, has a much better chance in Ohio of stopping Trump than Rubio does in Florida, where Trump is up by 20.
Yeah, I don't believe that poll at all. If you look at the method of that poll, they are sampling people who cannot vote in the Florida Republican primary.
But it's bigger than that, because the presence of New York, New Jersey, northeastern people, and people in states from the South that are in Florida add to that in many ways a narrative has advanced and I think taken hold in Florida that Marco Rubio is a part-time senator and he's half paying attention to the state. His poll numbers have gone down dramatically in the state, so I think it would play into Trump's hands. I think I go back.
Yeah, I think
Trump
Rubio's
has a much
rally.
Well, it's very likely. I mean, I'd be surprised if he didn't rally. But there's one problem.
That 20 poll just on methodological.
We'll
ways.
know in the next few days. But here's going to be a big telltale, in my view. You got a debate tomorrow night. It is going to be a bare knuckles MMA brawl. And while the exit polls showed that Rubio transforming into this aggressive, he's a fraud and a fraudster and all the comments that he's been making about Trump, he went so overboard in 2 interviews last night. I get the very distinct impression that Marco Rubio is being influenced and shaped by the establishment and that their goal now is at any cost to take out Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. And the problem is it's so unlike who the real Marco Rubio is. I think this is going to wear thin over the course of 2 weeks.
Oh, it's possible. I do think that the one thing we have not seen really in this race is a sustained ad campaign against Trump. And so if sort of
count how many times he called him a con man last night. Count how many times he sounded like Hillary Clinton and the Democrats.
That's not an ad campaign. I'm talking about a real ad campaign, not just $1 million here. From
what
the
was
Club
all
for
of
Growth.
Jeb Bush's money spent on? A lot of it was spent against Donald Trump.
No, most of the Right to Rise money went against Rubio, over $20 million.
But there was millions and millions of dollars spent on. Wait a minute, all
very
told
little
against Trump. I've seen these ads. I've heard these ads.
Well, there have been ads, but they didn't get much money behind them at all. There have been repeated.
Every time I went to Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, wherever I was, it was nonstop negative ads.
Not negative. No, not negative Donald Trump ads. There certainly were not.
Well, maybe not to this. Maybe it's just in the definition of sustained. I have seen
not like
the
4
ads.
years ago when you turn on the radio and the TV, and there was so much stuff against Gingrich that it took him down. I think I read where the amount of ads that were run against Trump in Iowa were equal to 1 week of what was run against Gingrich 4 years earlier. So there really has not been a sustained ad campaign yet against Trump in a big state that I've seen, because I certainly had the TV and the radio on all the time.
But
there were a few ads, but not many at all.
The one thing that we have seen here is that Donald Trump's support has stayed strong through thick and thin, and that his supporters are just dead on fighting for him. And I don't think that any amount of negative ads is going to influence them at this point based on everything that has happened at this point. Now, I also think one other thing. Once people sense that this is an establishment orchestrated plot and plan.
But it's not.
But it is.
Not.
No,
it's not.
But you say that, but I disagree with you.
It's not.
Let
Ben
me tell
Sass
you,
is not the establishment.
But I'm not talking
Club
about
for
Ben
Growth
Sass.
is not the
I am not
establishment.
talking about them. I am.
But you can't. I'm
you're
sorry.
not listening.
I'm going to fight
but
you
you're
on
not
this.
But you're not listening to my whole. You're interrupting me before I even finish it. What I'm
Because
saying
it's not
is,
the establishment
what I am
that is
saying
just fighting
is,
Trump.
I agree with that point. I'm not disagreeing, but you're missing my point. I am saying the establishment has gotten their money people together. They've gotten Rubio in rooms. They have sat him down. They have filled his head with every line that he's now currently using. And the hope is that their money combined with Rubio's mouth is going to take down Trump. That is what's going on behind the scenes, and I am 100% convinced of it.
But that is not the only thing going on against Trump.
You have a lot of Cruz supporters that don't want Donald Trump. I agree.
But it's not just people who are supporting Cruz or supporting Rubio. I think it's a lot of people that would happily choose from either candidate in the conservative side of the party that are engaged in an effort to stop Trump. And I just think it sounds nice and convenient to blame the quote-unquote establishment, but I just think that's a misreading of where things are vis-a-vis the party right now.
Do you really think, and let me pull up on I wrote it down. Let me pull this up because I think this is very, very important. As I watched and listened last night so closely to Marco Rubio going scorched earth and dumping the kitchen sink and again, con man, fraud, end of conservatism, KKK, uses illegal workers, makes clothes in China, agrees with Hillary, Planned Parenthood, blah, 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 blah. You don't think that you really believe that Marco Rubio on his own is doing this? You don't think the money people behind him?
No, you're not listening to me. And that I agree that probably there's an element of the establishment behind Rubio, absolutely. But I think the opposition to Trump is much more than just establishment.
But I've already
and
conceded
Rubio.
that point. I already conceded. Ben Sass, Cruz supporters, and even Kasich supporters, they want to stop at any cost Donald Trump. But there is an establishment. Look at Mitt Romney, for example. I've always liked Mitt Romney. I have no clue what this announcement is tomorrow, but Mitt Romney seems to be sitting in the wings, and that if Rubio loses on March 15th, he seems to be their next go-to plan.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to have much chance of happening.
I don't
think
either.
There's really anybody who thinks that Romney is the savior or anything like that. But at the same time, again, I think this is a much broader opposition. It doesn't mean that they're going to stop Trump. It doesn't mean that they will have a majority against him at any point in time. But I think it's a much more organic thing than just the GOP establishment trying to stop Trump.
Well, I do think that there is part conspiracy and then I think part organic. And, I think the idea of keeping everybody in, well, that's designed to keep Trump from getting to 1,237, going into Cleveland, and then it's a brokered convention. Then it's, the effort to get one or two or three people out of the race and get a one-on-one shot against Trump. That's not going to work. Ted Cruz has no business getting out. He won 4 big states. He had huge
absolutely.
wins, and he has a big delegate count.
No reason for Cruz to go anywhere. And again, as I said, he demonstrated yesterday that he could not only win Texas, but he won every one of those congressional districts. He took a whole bunch of delegates away from Trump. Trump showed a lot of strength in Georgia, in Alabama, in Arkansas, in Tennessee, in the individual congressional districts there. I think he won 30 of 35 or something like that. So in a sense, he drew Cruz on that issue, but he wasn't able to draw away. Now he's got a chance in these coming states. We may get to March the 15th, and it may be even a lot clearer at that point in time. But I think it will be a scorched earth kind of battle over the next 2 weeks. And it's one, again, if there is a big ad campaign, which really has not been run against Trump, I just wonder if that changes the dynamic at all.
Yeah, it does. But I think that the goal at this point is probably I think the standard agreement between both parties that you and I are describing here is that they want to keep everybody in the race, especially during proportional distribution of delegates, in the hopes that Trump doesn't get to 1,237.
Well, I think the Rubio people would have loved for Kasich to already been gone last night. So
100%, but that ain't happening.
I understand what you're saying, but that's the thought. I think those people who believe that if you get it down to just Cruz versus Trump or just Rubio versus Trump, I almost think that this is got to be a multi-headed kind of opposition, because Kasich can do well in certain areas, Rubio can do well in certain areas,
and again,
Cruz can.
And especially if it's winner take all, as Florida and Ohio become, then it's a whole different ballgame in terms of the strategy that they'll put together. But I will tell you that this hatred, there is an effort by many to. I actually think that they would go kamikaze to stop Trump at this point. And then, by the way, the same thing goes for Ted Cruz. I think that hatred is that deep among establishment people. But I like spirited debates with you. All right, 800-941-SEAN is our number.
Hannity Headline. A bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. The best post-Super Tuesday coverage available on your radio dial. Joining us now is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Let's get your general thoughts about last night, and then I've got a very specific theory that I want to throw at you and get your thoughts on.
Well, Cliff and I started watching it, and we're just fascinated all the way through. In a way, historically, one of the biggest stories is something which Fox and Friends captured brilliantly this morning. Everywhere you turn, there was a huge increase in Republican turnout and a substantial drop in Democratic turnout. So, first of all, something about what's going on in the Republican Party is working. And in Massachusetts, for example, 20,000 Democrats left their party to be available to vote, I suspect, for Trump, who did remarkably well. It's now a fascinating story. Trump is clearly the leading figure, but he's not quite yet the decisive winner, because as long as there are at least three people in the game, Kasich did very well, split Vermont with him in terms of delegates. Rubio finally got a victory in the Minnesota caucuses, and Cruz had a legitimate win back home, and then had a good win in Oklahoma, and did okay in Alaska. So what you've got is a guy who's the most powerful guy, but he has three, not one opponent. And it's going to make March 15th really a big deal, because he's got Rubio in his home state of Florida and Kasich in his home state of Ohio. And that begins to be the moment to potentially either put things away or see that we're going to be in for a very, very long run. So I thought it was a fascinating evening on the Republican side. I think Trump should feel very good overall. And when you win, Massachusetts, Virginia, Georgia, Alabama, think of all the different states that he was doing well in. He clearly has a national imprint unlike anybody else we've seen.
I don't know if you saw the two interviews. I watched one on Fox and one on CNN of Marco Rubio. And it's not the Marco Rubio that I've known over all these years, and something has happened. And he basically has gone thermonuclear on Donald Trump. And my theory here is that he has now surrounded himself, because it's so out of character for him. He's surrounded himself with establishment people. They're feeding his brain with all of these lines, and he has been tasked with almost like being a kamikaze pilot, destroying himself and destroying the people that they hate the most, Trump and Cruz, in the process. Let me play a little bit of this and get your thoughts on it and whether or not you think that I am right in what I believe.
The fight is to save the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, from someone who is not just a con artist, but who refuses to criticize the KKK. I mean, we cannot nominate someone that takes those positions, someone who shares Hillary's positions on Planned Parenthood, who says he's going to be neutral on Iran, who basically supports government-sponsored health care, which is undistinguishable from Obamacare. But this is a fight for the heart and soul of the Republican Party, and I will not give up this fight. I will go through all 50 states before we stop fighting. And at some point, everybody comes around and says we have to rally behind the front runner for the good of the party. They're saying the opposite. They're saying we have to rally to stop Donald Trump, who's a world-class con artist, and a guy who wouldn't even criticize the Ku Klux Klan, from being our nominee, because he'll do tremendous damage to the conservative movement and to the Republican Party. Donald Trump will never be the nominee of the Republican Party. We are not going to turn over the party of Lincoln and Reagan to a man who refuses to condemn David Duke, refuses to condemn the KKK, and agrees with Hillary Clinton on Planned Parenthood, on staying neutral on Israel, on health care, and on all sorts of other issues. And the guy's a con artist on immigration. He's hiring illegal immigrants to build Trump Towers and hires foreign workers to work in his hotels here in Florida. He makes his clothes overseas in China. And he's talking about bringing jobs back. He can start tonight by announcing that every Donald J. Trump product will be made in the United States from now on. So he's a fraud. He's a scam artist.
All right. So last night, and I actually wrote all of this down as it was going out because I thought it was so out of character for him. But he used the term con man every other second, fraud, end of the conservative movement, wouldn't condemn the KKK, brought that up again and again and again. I'd be winning if others weren't in the race. He uses illegal workers. He makes his clothes in China, agrees with Hillary on Planned Parenthood, and it goes on from there. Now, my interpretation is it's so out of character for him that I think that he's probably being fed a strategy, which is to take out Trump and take out Cruz because he was equally as harsh on Cruz.
Look, I mean, look where Rubio's challenge is. I mean, here's a guy who says he's the most electable, except he can't win anywhere. I mean, the only place he has won is the caucuses in Minnesota, which is one of the most liberal states in the country. He did very well in Northern Virginia, but think about it for a second. What is the heart of the Trump critique? Oh, it's the Washington metropolitan area. Where would you expect there's the least sympathy for Trump? Oh, it's all the people who he's threatening to change. So in that sense, Rubio got the residual impact in Northern Virginia of all of the government workers and lobbyists who have the most at stake in keeping the old order. Otherwise, he was pretty consistently running third, and in some places running a pretty bad third. And yet he wants to convince both Kasich and Cruz that they need to drop out because he's the guy who can win. Well, I think Cruz had a pretty good counter-argument saying, wait a second, I just carried the second largest state in the country. I carried Oklahoma. I'm winning in Alaska. How come you want me to drop out? And I thought it was almost funny at one point. So I think that you're probably right. What you have here is a combination of genuine desperation and coaching. And we frankly have a number of consultants who believe that nastiness and mean-spiritedness is a substitute for policy and ideas. And they think if they can do enough character assassination, they don't have to do any platform development. You know politics better than anybody I know. Why do I assume that Marco Rubio was sat down with big donors? We know that Meg Whitman and others have pledged millions and millions of dollars now to defeat Trump and Cruz. Why do I suspect that they sat him down in a room? They fed him every one of these lines. He is echoing it as often and as frequently as he possibly can. He is now their tool to destroy these two people. And if it takes the party down with it, so be it. They don't seem to care. Is that meeting, do you think a meeting like that happened? I think there are a lot of people who are terrified. They're frightened first of Trump because he is totally uncontrollable and he's an outsider and he represents the end of their insider world. They are very frightened by Cruz because he's consistently followed his own internal drummer and not paid any attention to the old order. I mean, imagine you're in a situation where you can either be for Trump to stop Cruz or for Cruz to stop Trump, but there may not be a third person. We'll know more about that in 2 weeks when we see whether or not Rubio can make up the difference. But the other thing that's happened is I think the anti-Trump consultants have concluded that the only way you can beat Trump is destroy his character. You have to go after him personally. You have to throw the kitchen sink, every single thing you can, and see if you can't drag him down because nothing else has worked. And I mean, if you were an anti-Trump activist, you'd be so terribly frustrated right now because no matter what he does that you think is destructive, he keeps going, and no matter what you throw at him, he keeps going. And last night was a very good example. And by the way, he does it while spending very little money. I mean, he's not buying. Look at what Jeb Bush wasted on ads that didn't work. And then look at the size of the Trump ad budget. It's an astonishing achievement, almost all of it based on earned media and social media and the personality of Trump himself.
So their first choice would be to convince everybody else to get out of the race. And why should Ted Cruz get out after he has 4 significant wins in this race? And you're right that the votes that Marco Rubio got in Virginia were from Northern Virginia and Fairfax County and surrounding counties. And then on the other side, and then he won in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 2 very liberal bastions that I don't think any Republican is going to get in a general election, or they're going to keep everybody in the field, and that means try and prevent Trump from ever getting to 1,237 delegates and have a brokered convention.
Look, the only practical anti-Trump strategy is to beg Kasich to stay in and hope he can win Ohio. And for everybody to pile on against Trump in Florida and hope that Rubio can win Florida, because those are both winner-take-all states. And if Trump wins them and gets to scale the delegates you get out of Florida and Ohio, then he really does begin to move towards being unstoppable. But remember, when you have proportional voting so that people can pick up a few delegates here, a few delegates there, and Kasich picked up 25 delegates last night without winning outright anyway. He split 6-6 in Vermont with Trump because they were basically tied. But basically, he was picking up one here, one there. Cruz was picking up a few almost everywhere. The result is that Trump's not quite got enough votes to be an outright majority, and at least in terms of last night's vote. And so, if you are the old order, you've got to hope that the momentum of winning doesn't become unstoppable. Because there is a point where people say, "Hey, he's won this many states. He's doing this many things. You know, you can't stop him. It will be anti-democratic representative government at some point." And then second, they've got to hope that all of this character assassination works. And what Trump has to do is figure out clear, clean answers so people can look at stuff, at the mud being thrown, and can understand that in fact there are pretty good explanations for most of that stuff he's being attacked for. But I think you've got at least 2 or 3 weeks of hysteria because the old order they're so terrified they're running in circles writing checks.
So let's get a preview then of tomorrow night, because I think you're right. I think it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks of just unbridled madness. So you'll have Rubio on that stage tomorrow night throwing the kitchen sink at Donald Trump, scorched earth, thermonuclear. It's going to be an MMA bare knuckles brawl. You got him on the one side, con artist and every other term that he keeps using and the KKK stuff. And then you're going to have on the other side of him Ted Cruz, who is questioning his conservative credentials on every single solitary issue. And Trump's going to be in the middle of this bare knuckles brawl and be taking it from both sides. What does he do?
I think he has to do just 3 very simple things if he can bring himself to do it and discipline himself to do it. The first is maintain the stature he set last night. I thought it was absolutely brilliant that everybody else, including Hillary, are making campaign speeches. Donald Trump holds a presidential-style press conference. It was a fabulous contrast in the right direction, and he was generally magnanimous and generally unifying, and that's the direction he's got to start moving in. So first, just remind himself as he walks in, if he is the front runner, he can afford to be the big guy. He can afford to speak for the nation. You know, he's not down on the same level as these other guys. Second, he has to focus on defeating Hillary. And he has to say, every time someone comes up, he has to say, I understand what you're trying to do, and if I were in your shoes, I would do it too, but I'm going to focus on beating Hillary Clinton. And if people see him as the anti-Hillary candidate and the other guys as the anti-Trump candidate, they shrink and he grows. The third thing he's got to do is just have a sense of humor. The reason they're throwing the kitchen sink at him is they're losing. I mean, he's got to say, hey, you know, it's great to be a winner. It's great. I appreciate you guys doing your desperate last best. And, boy, you all have been really inventive and really clever. But, you know, it's great to win.
Let me ask.
Just have a happy, positive tone.
Why do I suspect that is not the Donald Trump we're going to see tomorrow?
Probably not, but that's what he should be. I mean, if he really thought about it, that's what he should do. It's pretty simple. Because what the worst thing he can do is degenerate into a mud fight with people who are deliberately trying to drag him down to a fourth or fifth grade recess attitude. Here we are out here in the mud at recess, and now we're all the same level. He wants.
Well, all the other candidates would argue that he started it.
Of course. So tomorrow night he can prove he didn't by not doing it.
Yeah. Let's talk about, as we move forward here, we got these other states coming up, and then we've got, as you point out, on the 15th, Florida and Ohio, very, very important. If you had to give your best educated guess, and I hate making you do this, but you're good at it, so I'm going to ask you anyway, where does this end up?
I don't know yet. I think Kasich has a very realistic chance of winning Ohio. He carried 86 out of 88 counties. He's only behind about 6 points. And if he goes home and he focuses, he still has a huge, governors have enormous advantages, particularly at home. But he doesn't have any more than a good chance, because in the end, Trump is the national figure. Trump gets all the national media. And so you'd slightly favor Trump in Ohio, but Kasich has a real shot. I think, that in the case of Florida, Rubio's got a harder job, and it's a doubly harder job because he's a senator on the way out. He's 20 points behind. And frankly, I may be totally wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things this year. I don't think this descending into this pure negative, nasty litany of attacks, it doesn't feel like the Marco Rubio I've known all my life, all his career. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's really him. And I'm not sure that 2 weeks of that's going to help him.
Yeah. Well, exit polls last night showed that him going negative had not hurt him, so I assume he's probably going to misread that he can keep doing it and double down on it and triple down on it, and that it'll work for him. But I tend to agree with you that it's not going to work. Mr. Speaker, you've been very generous, as always, with your time. Thank you so much for being with us. 800-941-SEAN is our number. At the top of the hour, we've got a Trump, a Cruz, a Rubio supporter, and we will discuss last night's results and where this is going from here. And then we'll get your phone calls in as well, 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program.
Podcast. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
All right, news roundup, information overload hour on the Sean Hannity Show. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. All right, it's thermonuclear. It is drop the kitchen sink. It's MMA bare knuckles brawl. It is Marco Rubio, just full frontal, nonstop, never-ending assault on the GOP frontrunner, Donald Trump.
The fight is to save the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, from someone who is not just a con artist. They're saying we have to rally to stop Donald Trump, who's a world-class con artist, and the guy's a con artist on immigration. So he's a fraud. He's a scam artist.
Friends, do not let friends vote for con artists.
He's a con artist who is preying on people's fears and anxieties. Someone who is not just a con artist, but who refuses to criticize the KKK. I mean, we cannot nominate someone that takes those positions, someone who shares Hillary's positions on Planned Parenthood, who says he's going to be neutral on Iran, who basically supports government-sponsored health care, which is undistinguishable from Obamacare. But this is a fight for the heart and soul of the Republican Party, and I will not give up this fight. I will go through all 50 states before we stop fighting. We feel really good about the days to come, and you know what? In these races, usually what happens is you have a front runner, and at some point everybody comes around and says we have to rally behind the front runner for the good of the party. They're saying the opposite. They're saying we have to rally to stop Donald Trump, who's a world-class con artist, and a guy who wouldn't even criticize the Ku Klux Klan, from being our nominee, because he'll do tremendous damage to the conservative movement and to the Republican Party. And Donald Trump will never be the nominee of the Republican Party. We are not going to turn over the party of Lincoln and Reagan to a man who refuses to condemn David Duke, refuses to condemn the KKK, and agrees with Hillary Clinton on Planned Parenthood, on staying neutral on Israel, on health care, and on all sorts of other issues. And the guy's a con artist on immigration. He's hiring illegal immigrants to build Trump Towers and hires foreign workers to work in his hotels here in Florida. He makes his clothes overseas in China. And he's talking about bringing jobs back. He can start tonight by announcing that every Donald J. Trump product will be made in the United States from now on. So he's a fraud. He's a scam artist.
You all have friends. You all have friends that are thinking about voting for Donald Trump. Friends, do not let friends vote for con artists. He called me Mr. Meltdown. Let me tell you something. Last night in the debate during one of the breaks, two of the breaks, he went backstage. He was having a meltdown. First, he had this little makeup thing applying, like, makeup around his mustache, because he had one of those sweat mustaches. Then he asked for a full-length mirror. I don't know why, because the podium goes up to here, but he wanted a full-length mirror. Maybe to make sure his pants weren't wet. I don't know. Then, last one. Wow, every poll said I won the debate last night. No, this was him about himself, okay? Great honer. I think he meant to say great honor. I don't know how he got that wrong, because the E and the O are nowhere near each other on the keyboard. Great honer. All right. So, here's that's what I'm thinking. So, how does this guy, not one tweet, 3 tweets, misspell words so badly? And I only reached 2 conclusions. Number 1, that's how they spell those words at the Wharton School of Business, where he went. Or number 2, just like Trump Tower, he must have hired a foreign worker to do his own tweets.
All right, there you have it. That's dropping the kitchen sink. That's scorched earth. That's thermonuclear. That's MMA bare knuckles brawling. And the question is, what happened to the old Marco Rubio? And who is feeding him these lines, and why has he decided to take this path? And is this the establishment behind Marco? It seems like it's almost a kamikaze mission that he knows he's not going to help him, but he's going to try and take everyone out with him on the way down because the establishment so hates Donald Trump. Michael Cohen is the executive vice president, special counsel to Donald Trump. John Hart, a Rubio supporter, former senior aide to Senator Tom Coburn, editor-in-chief of conservative news site Opportunity Lives, and Victoria Coates, national security advisor to Senator Cruz and author of a book in her own right. And welcome all of you to the program. Michael Cohen, let me give you a chance to respond. I don't know any other way to describe this. This is not the same Marco Rubio, and why do I suspect that a bunch of big donors got him in a room and said it's your job to take him out, and that's why he's taken on a whole new personality, persona, and character?
You're 100% correct. Wall Street, K Street, the think tanks, the elite press, Washington groups, possibly the Republican Party, they are all desperate. They are all incredibly scared that Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, and he will ultimately be the president as well. It's very funny. I watched Marco last night, and if you notice, and Chris Christie was fabulous in calling him out at the debate, he's a liner guy. He reads something, he memorizes it, he scripts it, he waits for that term, and then bing, hit answer number A, hit answer number B, and that's why he repeats himself. There's no authenticity, there's no originality, there's just no heart in anything that Marco Rubio says, which is exactly why he did so poorly yesterday. And, you know, it reminds me of an old saying by Vince Lombardi, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. Marco Rubio is a loser.
John Hart, this is not the same Marco that I saw in the first 9 debates. This is not the same guy that I've interviewed so many times over the years. Do you really think this helps Marco Rubio in the long term? It doesn't seem like it's him in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I do, Sean. I think, the fact is, Donald Trump is a bully. He's a populist without portfolio. And sometimes you have to punch a bully back in the face. And, I would really challenge this whole notion of the establishment. Look, I spent 15 years working for Tom Coburn. I worked for Jim DeMint, Steve Largent. And the truth is, there is no grand Washington establishment that is fighting Donald Trump.
Well, hang on a second. But wait a minute. But in fairness, it's not just – but wait a minute. In fairness, there is an establishment, and the establishment hates Trump, and they hate Cruz. And by the way, of the 15 contests, Donald Trump won 11. I'm sorry. Donald Trump won, 10, and Ted Cruz won 4, and Marco Rubio won Minnesota. I mean, so there really seems to be a desperation to stop the insurgency candidacies of Trump and Cruz.
No, what there is with Trump is Trump is not a threat to the quote unquote establishment. He's a threat to conservatism. That's why you had National Review. A lot of thoughtful conservatives opposed Donald Trump. And look, we ended earmarks. We reduced and reformed the size and scope of government, and we did it because the power has shifted dramatically to the grassroots, and that's a wonderful thing. That is tremendous. But this idea that there's a conspiracy to stop Donald Trump, look, this
isn't a conspiracy. This is an actuality
of Eddie Grand
by Fox, by CNN, and by every major newspaper that's out there. The problem is you refuse to also acknowledge that Marco Rubio is the perfect example of a politician who never accomplished anything. And yet, what does he want to do?
Well, that's not true.
He wants to.
I worked in the Senate. No one has done more to.
Marco Rubio has done absolutely nothing.
Rubio.
He's the poster boy for crony capitalism. He wants to turn around and look to 30 years ago with Donald Trump and see if he can't find
Trump is a crony capitalist.
Marco Rubio's a fighter. Marco Rubio's best punch had no effect last night. Marco Rubio, as I said, is a loser. And honestly, when you have this one state, don't you think he should do the right thing for the party and he should get out, let them all go ahead and let them now coalesce around Donald Trump, the one guy who's actually bringing in people who are outsiders, Democrats as well, in order to win this election?
All right, let me go to Victoria here. Victoria, I similarly feel the establishment hates Ted Cruz as much, if not more. Is some of what I'm saying true here?
Well, I think so, Sean, and congratulations, Michael, on a great night last night. But Senator Cruz isn't in this to call names or go into personal attacks, and we were really pleased with how last night went. We've had the full force of the establishment, which no matter what John says does exist. It's a powerful force in Washington, and it's been trained on Senator Cruz, and he managed a tremendous victory in Texas, got Oklahoma, got Alaska. We're really, really pleased with how last night went, and so I think it's time to stop with all the mud throwing and focus on these real issues.
Well, and don't you think Donald Trump would like to do that? Instead, what happens, right? So Cruz and Rubio, they're insiders who have no executive experience. Ted Cruz is a lawyer. And for most of his life, he was a government lawyer. The guy's never been an executive. He's never met a payroll. He's never created a single job. He never had to worry about
He ran a Supreme Court litigation practice in the private sector.
I mean, maybe he'd make a good Supreme Court justice, but not a president. I mean, this country has had enough of lawyers and politicians. They're looking for somebody.
Michael, we've had this conversation before. He is not an insider.
Ted Cruz attacked Donald Trump, right? And he talked about how Donald Trump is he's not independent and so on. Donald Trump is the only one that's funding his own campaign. Ted Cruz is funded by Goldman Sachs, by Big Oil, the Wilkes family in Texas, Comcast, Baker Botts, and all the big corporate entities that have their own agenda. And the problem that you have when you're dealing with somebody like Ted Cruz is he comes out and he makes statements, for example, as ridiculous as Donald Trump is going to be the worst for Second Amendment. Donald Trump is the Second Amendment. The guy has a New York State carry permit for 30 years.
All right, let me go back to Victoria. You want to respond?
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. Are we saying the only people who can be honest politicians in the United States are the ones who can self-fund? And it's remarkable to me that Donald Trump would attack Ted Cruz for putting his own personal wealth on the line in his Senate 2012 campaign. He's worth, I mean, frankly, Michael, so much less than Mr. Trump, and it meant so much more to him and his wife and his young family to risk that money on his campaign. And quite frankly, I think it's disrespectful of you, given that disparity,
do you think it's disrespectful
to call
when Ted Cruz comes out there and starts attacking Donald Trump for he's not worth what he says that he's worth. He doesn't mean what he says. He turns around and they call him all sorts of accusing him of all sorts of mob. He turns around and he talks about Donald Trump has mob contacts and Donald Trump is this and Donald Trump is that.
He can release his taxes and we'll know the truth then. You can't wear white gloves if you're going to play in the mud. And the problem with Ted Cruz is Ted Cruz, like I said, he's part of the establishment. He's a Koch crony. He's part of the entire. Look. I think you've got us mixed up with Mr. Rubio, who the
Donald Trump's not doing this, right? Donald Trump's not looking to run to be president to be rich. He already is, and he's not.
All right, but let me step in here for 1 second.
He's not doing this for fame, like these other guys may be, because he's already famous.
All right, but Michael, hang on a second. I think
Donald Trump wants to make America great again, and the only way to do that is to create jobs and give people hope and opportunity, and that's what's resonating. Nothing more, nothing less.
All right, let me go to John Hart. John?
Yeah. Look, Trump is a very thin-skinned politician, and that's what we're seeing, I think, in this discussion right now, is that he's not able to take criticism because he doesn't have any plans. And again, Trump's problem is he's not a conservative. He has no track record to prove to skeptical Republicans that he's going to nominate, Supreme Court justices who are conservative. justices who will defend the Second Amendment, the First Amendment. And again, he's an empty suit. He's an empty vessel. Down south we say that, he's all hat, no cattle. He doesn't have any specificity with his plans. And when you
with all due respect, Donald Trump has done more in a week than Marco and Ted Cruz.
how are we going to get Mexico to pay for a wall? He can't explain that. He can't explain this health care plan. So he's taken the Republican Party for a ride, is what he's doing.
He's taken that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Donald Trump accomplishes more in a week than these guys have accomplished since the day that they started. As far as I'm concerned, they want to sit there and they want to go and try to find things and cast some sort of negative doubt as against Mr. Trump. It's ridiculous. The entire notion
right, but Trump,
the entire notion
it is
that
so
Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio has ever accomplished anything in
Let me ask Victoria, because we're running out of time. I think Ted Cruz has been consistent in this campaign, but we've seen this dramatic change in Rubio. What do you make of that part? Do you agree with that, first off?
Well, I do agree, Sean. And, I have to say to Michael that, it's not ridiculous to draw clear policy contrasts. And that was what we should do tomorrow night. I think Senator Cruz looks forward to that. I assume Mr. Trump does as well. But yes, I think it's remarkable that you've seen the shift in tone from Senator Rubio's campaign, and I think maybe they're not terribly pleased with some of the results that they've been seeing. As I said, we're really very, very encouraged by what happened last night.
They've spent a fortune coaching little Marco Robot Rubio in order to say the things that he does. Then they have Ted the liar Cruz, who sits on the other side and attacks Donald Trump too, and then you have the audacity to turn around and say that Donald Trump is thin-skinned. Let me tell you, no human being should have to stand on a stage like that, running for the presidency of the United States of America, and be assaulted by two individuals with questions that are all about Donald Trump. Ted Cruz's entire speech last night was about who? Donald Trump. Let me tell you something. Ted Cruz goes to sleep and wakes up every morning in complete fear that Donald Trump is running away with this race, and hopefully by mid-March that he is now going to be the Republican nominee.
All right, I've got to leave it there, but let me tell you, I think we can do 5 hours with you three. Thank you all for being with us.
Anytime.
All right, 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. Our travel continues this week as we will be back at CPAC 2016. It's happening March 2nd through March 5th at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in Maryland. And I will be speaking there and taking on a couple of other roles that have yet to be, as I know, determined. Matt Schlapp is back with us. He's CPAC's chairman. And what a year this has been since last year when we kind of kicked off the presidential race.
Yeah, Sean, do you remember what you did last year? You interviewed Jeb Bush.
I interviewed Jeb Bush. I interviewed Cruz. I interviewed Carson. No, I interviewed Trump and Rubio.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought, well, Jeb Bush is the leader in the race. Sean Hannity is going to get up there and ask him tough questions, and we're going to see if we can accept this guy. A year later, wow, it's a whole different race.
Yeah, I agree. CPAC has been revamped and redeveloped, and I had stayed away from it for a number of years until you told me things were changing. And I want people to know that what the effort that you and your wife Mercedes have put into this. Mercedes, by the way, is a Fox News contributor. Because I think this is really important. This is where conservatives get together, especially young conservatives, and that's why I like to be there. I don't know. When do I give my speech? Thursday night, right, in the lead up to the debate?
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sean. And you're right. We've put a lot of effort into the fact, look, conservatives, our theme is our time is now, and it comes from a Reagan speech to CPAC. And Reagan came to CPAC 13 times. And what I've tried to do in the short time I've been chairman is to use Reagan as a model. It's when the conservative movement was great, and it's also when we had a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and that coalition included people that care about the culture, that care about national security, and that care about the fact that government just continues to grow and expand in people's lives. And if we don't appeal to all these different types of conservatives, including our libertarian allies, we're not going to be successful. And ACU and CPAC is a place where they come together and they unite.
Yeah. Who else is speaking this year? Can you give us a list of some of the speakers?
Oh, we got some great speakers. Of course, you, and you're going to lead up the debate watch party as we watch this next very important
And then
debate.
we're doing our post-debate show, right, I think, from the stage, right, for Fox.
That's right. My guess is you'll have some fans behind you hooping and hollering.
Woo! A bunch of drunk seat packers. Awesome.
No. We'll have all the presidential candidates there, all five, and it sounds like Ben Carson might be making some news there.
Well, he's out. I mean, I announced this earlier in the program here. Ben Carson, he's not going to the debate on Thursday evening, and he says he doesn't have a path forward in this presidential campaign, so he suspended his campaign like others, so now we're down to 4.
Yeah, and he's going to come to CPAC and talk about where he thinks the state of things are. We're going to get the other presidential candidates there, and then, great friends and allies like Mark Levin and Michelle Malkin and Ben Sass, a great new conservative senator, is going to be a great lineup.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great lineup. I'm a little mad at Ben Sass right now because I just don't like the idea that if somebody's candidate doesn't win, that they pick up their toys and go home.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Matter of fact, these people who are on this never Trump bandwagon, I just think they've got it all wrong. I will do nothing to help Hillary Clinton.
Nothing. I'm with you. And you know what? This isn't over yet. They have a lot more races ahead. And what I keep telling people, if you don't like the way this is coming out, look, I thought Ted Cruz had an awesome night last night. If you like Ted Cruz, go fight hard for Ted. If you like John Kasich, go fight hard for Kasich. I think Marco Rubio, I don't know what's happened to this guy. I mean, he's not even the same person in the last week. And I suspect, Matt, that people have gotten in his head and told him you've got to change into this. And he's taking their money and their advice, and he's not being himself, which I think is political suicide, if you want my opinion.
I agree with that. I think Marco is the most gifted political communicator of our age. I think he has got God-given talents like I've never seen.
I agree.
And
that's why this is so odd to me.
Sean, you get into presidential campaigns and you've got it exactly right. You get down to the point where it's, you got to start making something happen. And sometimes people try radical new strategies. And I think he wins when he's himself.
All right, so we'll see you at CPAC. Matt Schlapp, CPAC chairman. I will be there Thursday and Friday. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. It's an honor to be there with you. How funny was it last year? I see these cute girls in the front row when I'm speaking, and they turned out to be your girls. I didn't even know it.
Yeah, and they were getting to miss school. So the most important thing that day is they missed school. The second most important thing is they met you.
Yeah, and how old are the girls now?
They are from the ages of 4 to 12. They will be there again. And I don't know what their politics.
No, they were all dressed.
But
they were all dressed to say these were your younger girls, and I'm like, wow, we're doing this for them. We got to save the country for these little girls.
Well, that's for sure. And let me tell you, it means a lot to our audience at CPAC that you come back, and you're going to be the highlight again this year. And let's go save our country.
All right, Matt Schlapp, thank you for being with us. 800-941-SEAN is a toll-free telephone number. Tara is in Mesa, Arizona. Tara, hi. How are you? Glad you called.
Hey, Sean. Hey, I just had something to run by you. Do you think that it's possible the establishment, once, let's say, it goes to a brokered convention, like they force a brokered convention, I mean, then they're going to take away, the will
I think
of the
that's
people.
one of the key strategies that they're working on. Do everything possible to prevent Donald Trump from getting to 1,237 delegates, go into Cleveland, have the first vote, nobody wins outright, and then the delegates are then set free to go for whoever they want, and, try and steal the nomination? Yes, I do believe that's possible.
Yes.
By the way, that's the end of the Republican Party if they do that. That's the end of them.
What?
If they try to do that, it'll be the end of the Republican Party.
Oh, well, they're doing a great job on ending it just alone. I mean, I don't think that they don't listen to the voters. They haven't in a very long time, so this is something that they would definitely do.
I don't know what Mitt Romney's going to announce tomorrow. I don't know why he's out there on Twitter the way he is. Here's my frustration, and I'd be honest. I think Mitt would have been a great president, and I had a great relationship with Mitt Romney. Yeah. But here he's been so quiet for the most part, like George W. Bush about Obama, and yet it's like now they can't criticize fellow Republicans enough, and I'm like, it's very frustrating to me that that's happening. It really is, because all it is, and to see Marco Rubio, who I really, he's a hard guy not to like. And to see this guy, take on all these lines against Trump and Cruz, to me, is just unimaginable. It's not him. It's not the person.
No. I think somebody's gotten into his ear saying, this is what we have to do, and then I'll get you there. We will put you there.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yes.
All right, good call.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Tara. Brenda is in Vegas, the 50,000-watt Clear Channel blowtorch of the West Coast, K-Dawn Radio. What's going on, Brenda? How are you?
Hi, Sean. It's great to get to talk to you. My complaint is that Rubio, Cruz, Clinton, Sanders are all out there, hey, when I get in the White House, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Hey, Trump, what are you going to do? My question is, why doesn't Trump come back and say, okay, you have been in politics for how many years? You have been working with Congress. How many years? You haven't accomplished anything. So what makes us think you're going to accomplish if you make president?
I thought Trump last night, I thought, and it was such a clear distinction, and I'm only giving you objective analysis here. I've been very clear that I support the insurgency year, and there are two insurgency candidates in this race. But I thought last night, for the first time, I saw Donald Trump really seem presidential. I thought Donald Trump hit the perfect tone, pitch, and cadence last night, which, while everyone else was kind of giving another rah-rah campaign speech, I thought that he distinguished himself, and I thought it served him well, as I said earlier. So look, there's a certain amount of fighting that I'm willing to accept. I do mixed martial arts. I trained this morning, and I got the crap beat out of me. So I don't mind a bloodbath, to be honest. I'm a fighter by nature. But when it gets to the point that you have people on suicide missions almost, that they're willing to take down the whole party because they're not winning.
Exactly.
I don't like it. It's now bordering on pathological to me.
Cruz is actually, not Cruz, Rubio. I actually liked him at the beginning, but now he's very childish. It's like he doesn't really give a damn what he does to bring Donald Trump down. He's going to bring him down.
But by the way, they hate Ted Cruz as much as they hate Trump. They hate them both. They hate them both. And Mitt Romney's major speech tomorrow in the 2016 race, I'm like, we went all in for Mitt. And I can tell you that people in my life, including my viewers, my listeners, were depressed that he lost. And I just, there's nothing good, I think, coming out of this tomorrow.
No, I agree with you. Nothing. I mean, it's just, I'm 67 years old, and I have never in my life seen anything take place like it's going on right now.
Brenda, thank you. WHIO AM FM in Dayton, Ohio. Stacy's next. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
How's it going, Sean? It's a real pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine. What's going on?
I think that Rubio is as desperate as they get, and I think he's going to grasp at everything he can. He's hoping for a broken convention. That way, if Trump doesn't get enough delegates, the establishment will put Rubio in. So he's going to do anything he can to grasp at any straw he can, because he's not going to make it on his own.
I'm just disappointed, and it's not that. Look, I have actually said. And more than other people, and I get into this with my friend Ann Coulter. We were having a little Twitter spat, but we're still BFFs. We're still best friends forever. And look, I accept. Marco said he would never support an amnesty bill. He sold it as one. He sold it that it wasn't. It ended up being that. He's paid a huge political price. He's won one of 15 contests now, a caucus in Minnesota, and for him. To me, this is like a kamikaze mission that he's on, that if he can't have it, he's going to take everyone down with him. And whatever's going on with Romney here seems very dubious to me and conspiratorial that they want to take out these two men. And I'm like, why? Because we conservatives have been stuck with horrible candidates like John McCain and Bob Dole, for crying out loud. And now
I think that what what you had said about the amnesty thing and everything. The problem is every single time you get Rubio up there, I mean, how many times do you see him say one thing and then they show video clips and audio clips from 5, 10, 15 years? You do the same thing with Donald. Do you ever see that with Cruz? No. And all they keep doing is, with Rubio wanting to get in there and taking everybody down and just bashing Trump the way he is and mocking him like a 3-year-old. And then because he wants the establishment to put him in if it's a broken convention because supposedly they don't like Cruz. Well, I'll be honest, I don't need a commander-in-chief who wants to be liked by the establishment. I need a commander-in-chief who is afraid of not being liked.
I think he's taking their money and their advice. That's the point. Anyway, good call, Stacey. Is it Jean or Jeannie in Florida? Jeannie, how are you? Welcome to the program.
Very good, Sean. Thank you so much for taking my call. And
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you very much for your integrity in the media.
Thank you.
Because the behavior,
I'm trying hard. I'm getting beat up, but I'm trying my best. I really am.
But you know what? Keep doing what you're doing because we need a voice of reason out there. And what I'm calling in about to let you know, I've been a Democrat my whole life. All right? Now, I vote for the person, not the party.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put Obama in. I damn sure wouldn't put Hillary in. And for the first time in my life, I went and changed parties because I am in Florida. Mm-hmm. I don't want Rubio in. I didn't want Jeb Bush in. But by God, I'm going to vote for Trump because Rubio, I've dealt with him. He is very dismissal of the people that are his constituents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Left a very bad taste in my mouth.
That's why I think he's going to have trouble in Florida. His polls have gone down significantly, and people viewed him as a part-time senator. I think it's coming back to hurt him, and I also think comprehensive immigration hurt him there as well. Look, I honestly I would have been able to get over it because he said repeatedly on this program, it was wrong. I made a mistake. And many of my conservative friends say, no way. But I don't think I can get over what's going on now. It is a shame to me that somebody with such political talent, natural, raw talent, is allowing himself to go down this path, which I think is destructive to him and everybody else in the race. Anyway, good call. Appreciate it.